Star Wars peace and Soviet control cease. I am, as always, your host, Christopher Paul Dugdale, MEDMA. We are Duncanville High School in these United States, and today is April 29th, 2021. And on this date in history, and I'm going to go with tomorrow's date, April 30th, in 1945, Adolf Hitler killed himself. Pretty good day, huh? Yeah. So everyone have a great day, and I will see you on the other side.
Now, here's another strange thing that could only happen during the 1980s. Ronald Reagan was watching a movie called Return of the Jedi, and in that there was a space station that would shoot lasers that could destroy other ships or planets. Based on this movie, and this movie alone, Ronald Reagan decided to have a press conference where he would introduce initiatives of his own. Now, rather than talk to current scientists about this, uh, he would uh, he would go on in a presidential address and introduce a program without any type of scientific backing at all. Okay, he called this Strategic Defense Initiative. It was labeled Star Wars, and the idea was we would use missiles and lasers to destroy incoming missiles. Okay, again, we don't even have the technology with lasers now to do this, but he tells the nation in a national address that we were developing and that we were on the verge of being able to use these for peace. Again, we don't have the ability to do this now, and he didn't talk to any scientists first. So the Soviets, they looked at this and they thought, this is a joke, but with all the money we were putting into national defense, maybe we had somehow found some type of massive breakthrough and that we had somehow come up with this. So Gorbachev said that the Soviets would cut back their nuclear weapons if Reagan gave up the Star Wars or SDI program, the program that did not exist other than in Reagan's mind. But Reagan refused. This is somehow bluffing in a game that millions of people or billions of people could have died. But somehow it worked. So the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. This is the beginning of the end for the Soviet Union. Reagan and Gorbachev got together. They agreed to reduce the number of nuclear weapons. The Soviet Union would reduce military spending, and this would lead to economic and political reforms. Communism would collapse in Eastern Europe at the end of the year in 1987, mainly because the Soviets couldn't keep all their forces in those countries. Peaceful elections replaced communism. So instead of communism and the Cold War coming to some major battle where people get killed, it falls apart because of financial reasons. The Soviet Union is almost done, but it's not yet.
So the fall of communism. It's hard to say exactly what caused the fall of communism because there were so many different factors. A lot of people want to say that it was Ronald Reagan and his policies that really pushed it, but it was a combination of things that were done by the United States over the 45 years right before the fall of communism, and part of it had to do with the inability of the Soviet Union to compete long term economically with the United States, especially in the buildup of the arms race between the two nations and the space race between the two nations, and the attempt to work with them on a industrial level as well, mainly because of large problems that they had in the Soviet Union due to things like absenteeism, where people weren't just showing up to work. And, well, uh, they just didn't have an ability to stop what was going on. There were also problems with high oil prices. Many of the state run enterprises were extremely inefficient. There were very large government debts, and they constantly had to patrol and maintain the satellite nations that they had that were fighting constantly for national autonomy, religious freedom, and political rights, as well as some people within the Soviet Union doing the same thing.
So, in 1991, the Soviet Union falls apart. Gorbachev, Mikhail Gorbachev, was arrested in a coup d'etat. Remember, coup d'etats is an attempted takeover or a takeover or overthrow of the government or of some type of program. So he is arrested. The Russian president, remember, there were about 14 different nations that made up the Soviet Union. Boris Yeltsin, who is the president of Russia, rescued Gorbachev. He put him back in power. Shortly after Gorbachev was put back in power, he resigned and announced the end of the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union's over.
Uh, Boris Yeltsin, this was a man who rescued Gorbachev whenever he was arrested during the coup d'etat, right before Gorbachev ended the Soviet Union. He was something of a maverick. At one point, he was expelled by the Soviet Union Communist Party, or the CPSU, Communist Party Soviet Union, by Gorbachev. And he gets a lot of power from the independence movements that were caused by Gorbachev's returns. He was the leader of Russia, which during the time that I'm talking about now, which is post collapse of the Soviet Union. So he was a president of it whenever it was just a part of the Soviet Union, and then he was president of Russia afterwards also. So in Poland, Edward Gierek replaced Gomka and started borrowing from the West for economic reforms. Okay, Solidarity was what was it was an independent labor union, and it was led by shipyard workers, and it grows to a really large group. It was led by a worker by the name of Lech Walesa, and they had 10 million people, and they voted they demonstrated to try and get representation for free elections. And General Wojciech Jaruzelski is going to declare martial law in 1981 to try and keep this from happening. But by 1989, Solidarity had won free elections, and they took control of the legislature. And Walesa is actually going to win the presidency and the Nobel Peace Prize. So you see a lot of reform happening in Poland at that time. In Hungary, and no, this has nothing to do with lunch, the nation of Hungary, James Kadar, remained in power. He decentralizes the economy, but there's major problems with economic stagnation, so the economy wasn't growing in any way whatsoever, and rising debt. He's eventually going to be pushed out of power through free elections in 1988. Now, because of the revolutions in the 1960s, Nagy and other revolutionary leaders were going to receive burial honors. And the barbed wire that was around the borders, once it's removed, is going to lead to a flood of East German immigrants. But that won't last for long. East Germany. So, East Germany was run with an iron fist by Erich Honecker, and he ran with the Stasi, or secret police, or state police. And East Germany had the strongest economy in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, the strongest economy was held by West Germany. But once the two unite, they're going to spend ridiculous amounts of money to get the country together financially. Okay? Uh, when Gorbachev visits East Germany, it actually starts mass demonstrations. And the East German Politburo is going to remove Honecker. Now, the Politburo is the organization at the top of the communist governments, and whoever controls the Politburo controls that country and is the leader of that country. So they remove Honecker and they open up travel through the Berlin Wall. This is the beginning of the end of the of East Germany, and well, actually not necessarily East Germany, but of the Berlin Wall and the thing that separated Eastern and Western Germany from being able to unite. So in December of 1989, the wall that separated East and West Germany is torn down by the people that lived there. This is something that was on the news quite a bit. It was in the school news as well. There was a channel called Channel 1 that most of the students were able to watch, and you could see them, live videos of this going on where people were standing on the wall. People were able to see each other that hadn't been able to see each other in some time, and families were reunited, and things really changed once this happens. And within 10 months, Germany would reunite into one country. Now, East Germany still was going to have many problems, and it was going to cost a lot of money to get them to the same level of success that West Germany was able to enjoy. So German reunification, okay? So they spent trillions of dollars bringing East Germany up to ecological standards, meaning protecting the environment. If you went to Germany today, one of the things that would stand out, other than the fact that you can't find any trash anywhere, is just how green everything is. The power, electric, solar panels everywhere, just, a beautiful country. And East Germany was far behind them, due to the lack of restoration after World War II. The Green Party worked with the Social Democratic Party to make these changes in East Germany once the countries were unified. There was an Earth Summit held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992 where leaders from around the world got together to talk about global warming, fossil fuels and alternative fuel sources, the increasing temperatures on the Earth, and the reduced ozone layer. This was followed up by the Kyoto Protocol that was signed in Tokyo, where 150 nations pledged to reduce their greenhouse gases. But the U.S. would not ratify this agreement. Czechoslovakia. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're kind of rolling through each country here to see, just what exactly they did to go through this period and create their own nations following the fall of communism. So in Czechoslovakia, they have mass demonstrations that started in the Prague. And the Charter of 77 is led by a playwright by the name of Václav Havel. And he united the people against the communist regime. And so this is in 1989, right as everything's just starting to fall apart. The government soon collapsed after there were free elections like there was through most of Eastern Europe. You also had the free press, and Havel becomes the president of Czechoslovakia. Now, Czechoslovakia, by the way, is a combining of two different people together into one single nation. So the Velvet Divorce is going to separate the nation, and then you're going to have two separate nations. You're going to have the Czech Republic, and you're going to have Slovakia. Okay? Which shouldn't be hard for you, but for people from my generation that knew that country, as Czechoslovakia for so many years, uh, it's been difficult to always separate that, especially when you're talking about it, because you talk more about Czechoslovakia before World War II, and you know what happened with Hitler during that time. In Romania, Nicolae Ceausescu ruled with an iron fist from 1965 to 1989. He was against the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia. He improved relations with the West and Western Europe, but he put the country in poverty to try and pay off the national debt, and he lived in great wealth. And he was able to maintain his station and keep people in poverty with the use of the Securitate police. Now, in 1989, once a lot of the Soviet support is gone, revolution soon breaks out with support from the regular army among the people. The government falls apart. Ceausescu and his wife were captured and executed. And this new National Salvation Front would oversee the transition from communism to democracy and capitalism. Uh, so Yugoslavia was a completely different story from everywhere else. Okay, there were so many different ethnic groups inside Yugoslavia, so it's going to cause some major problems. Uh, throughout the time. Now, since it was ruled by Tito with such an iron fist, there were no. I mean, a lot of the problems with these different divisions disappeared until Tito died in 1980. But there were problems between the Catholic Croats, the Orthodox Serbs, and the Croat Ustaše are going to commit atrocities against the Serbs during World War II that they don't get a chance to do anything about until later, and they will get their revenge on each other. There are several wars that take place in the 1990s. Once these areas get their independence, Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia, and Herzegovina all become their own nations, and they will take advantage of each other and fight each other. And there are ethnic cleansings, mainly against the Muslims in these regions as well.
So, in the Balkans, there were some major problems there, and these groups had been fighting since, for a long time. It was one of these groups that were fighting that led to World War One. So Serbia and Montenegro, one nation. It was led by Slobodan Milosevic. Say that name 5 times real fast. Slobodan Milosevic, and he invades Bosnia to take back Serbian land. And when he invades Bosnia, one of the first things he does is starts an ethnic cleansing or a genocide of Bosnian Muslims. So while this is going on, Croatian army started attacking Serbian civilians, and the U.S. and UN would end these hostilities with the Dayton Accords. So there was some reorganization of some countries, and in Kosovo, Slobodan Milosevic started another cleansing of Muslim Albanians, and would get arrested by the world courts and sentenced to death, and he would die during the trial at The Hague on war crimes.
So the European Union, this is started in 1991, and this really was a game changer for Europe. It really changed the way that they were able to trade globally and turn them into a world power. There was a European Parliament that was put together, and this was largely an economic system that really goes into almost a government system, although all of the governments of Europe did maintain separate governments. There were 28 members that were part of this. There were 12 countries that had a common currency, although this does not include Great Britain. 500 million people were part of the European Union, and they controlled about 40% of the world's trade. Now, there was a global depression that took place, a financial crisis in 2007, and Germany had the financial strength to be able to bail out Portugal, Spain, Greece, Ireland, and Cyprus, all of those at the same time. So this makes it a major trading opponent of the United States, but also a companion that we worked with. With the creation of the European Union, they also provided universal health care, and this was free medical health care for all people. Now, you would pay about 25% of your salaries in taxes, but this would give you medical care anywhere in Europe, and it is provided for anyone. So if you are someone that is traveling through Europe, you can get protection from their healthcare system as well. Family allowances. The welfare state that was created, this provides a minimum level of material care for children. They were promoting increased birth rates. This welfare state also opens up universities and expands scholarship to allow working class people to go to college. So this makes it so that everyone is able to be a part of this and join the great European dream that existed during this time. So, the British and West German welfare states are based on the premise that women should stay home with their children. Okay, so the U.S. labor force in 1900, about 15% of married women worked, but by 1970, you're looking at about 62%. Sweden, married women increased from about 47% in 1963 to 66% in 1975. But the Soviet Union, about 92% or 92.5% of all married women were working in the Soviet Union. So you see a lot of change, by women working in the workplace. Wow, what an odd phrasing. So, when they started the retirement system in Europe, it took 20 workers to fund one retiree. But as the system continued to grow, it moved to the point where 3 to 5 people could take care of one retiree, and it should be getting closer to a one-to-one basis over time. Okay, so these welfare benefits are cradle-to-grave benefits. They increased in Eastern and Western governments after World War II. Now, part of having these people retired does open up the job market so that there are jobs available for other people. Marxist governments were dedicated to controlling class conflict, but Western governments provided old age pensions. And again, this is to create more jobs, so it's not necessarily an altruistic thing to provide care for the elderly. It's to get them to stop working so these jobs can be taken by younger people who need the job and the experience. So, anti-immigrant political parties. Okay, so this is really going to increase during the 1990s. There's a massive influx of Muslim immigrants into Europe, and Muslims will outnumber the Christians in the 21st century. And So this is a concern of several Christians in Europe and in other countries around the world. Now, things went a little bit overboard whenever someone made a political cartoon that satirized Muhammad, and this there's going to be some other problems as well. A man by the name of Theo Van Gogh was assassinated because he made a film called Submission that was critical of the way that women were treated in Islamic nations. So guest workers. So jobs, the job market exploded. Okay, so 15 million immigrants from Southern Europe, Africa, and the Middle East helped with Europe's labor shortage. Uh, so people that came in from these nations that weren't necessarily part of the European Union came in, but state benefits and citizenship was not given to all of these workers. And when the recession finally hits in 2007, these workers were asked to return back to the countries they came from in the first place. Uh, this included 17% of the labor force in Switzerland and about 10% of the labor force in Germany. And there's going to be several anti-immigrant movements that go on in Europe during this time period. Anti-immigration and neo-Nazis fought for guest workers' expulsion and attacked ethnic neighborhoods in Germany. The National Front Party in France was led by Jean-Marie Le Pen, and they wanted to end immigration and support economic nationalism. Okay, so an expulsion of anyone who was not French by their definition. Le Pen lost in a runoff for the presidency, and France is going to pass a law prohibiting women from wearing hijabs in France. In Austria, the Freedom Party won 27% of the vote in 1999, and this is a group that was trying to pass anti-immigration legislation. This brings us to the end of today. We're almost there, everyone. Just hold together. We just need another day to finish going through everything. So just hold tight. The AP test is right around the corner. We're almost through all this. We're doing well, and we are making it. So, in the meantime, everyone have a great day. Get some rest. Don't cocaine, don't AIDS, and please don't COVID. And I will see you on the other side. This is Doug Dell, and have a great night.